hello, my name is Pyper. Hello, hello. I am 17 years old, and I am a senior at Lubbock Cooper High School. I'm usually right over there playing bass guitar every week. Woo. And I'm going to teach you an Old Testament story today. Yes. Okay. So this whole story is going to be basically made up of a bunch of rhetorical questions. I love English, and I love a good rhetorical question. And the dictionary states that a rhetorical question is a noun, which is a question in order to create dramatic effect and to make a point rather than to get an answer. So when I ask all of these questions, I want you to think about your answer thoroughly, and I want you to really process it and think about how this applies to you in your life, because that's how you can really understand the Old Testament. Okay. First question is, what story? And you can get out your gray Bibles and open to Numbers 22. Get my Bible. Page 112. 112. Okay, so verse 1 in Numbers 22. Wait, I think. Hold on. I don't want to tell you wrong. Okay, yes. Are you ready? So then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. So that's all you really need for now to set up this story. So the king of Moab in this situation in the Bible is terrified of the people in Israel because those are God's people right now. And this is a completely foreign concept to all of the people of Moab. And the king is like really freaking out. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to have to do whatever we can to keep the people out. So the king of Moab calls his most trusted servant to seek Balaam and summon Balaam. And who is Balaam is our next question. And Balaam is the magical sorcerer who can cast curses upon people, and the king thinks that Balaam is like the key to getting God's people out. So he's thinking that Balaam is going to come, and he's going to cast a big curse on the people, and then they can never come in, and he's like, this is perfect. So he sends out his most trusted messengers to find Balaam and offer him this huge, immense amount of treasure. And at first Balaam's like, nah, I don't need that. And then he's like, okay, well, here's 400 million more biblical dollars. I don't know how you would say that, but there's a lot of money, so Balaam is finally like, okay, I cannot refuse. So Balaam kind of has somewhat of an altercation with God. He's not listening to God, and he's like, I'm going to go cast a curse upon your people, and officially, he's like, you know what, no, I'm not going to listen to you, God. I'm going to do what I want. Okay, Numbers 21, here we go. Balaam's donkey. So Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. So, okay, let me set the scene. Balaam is here, and he's riding on his donkey with his 2 people that are going to take him back to the king. And he's like, I cannot wait for the millions of biblical dollars I'm going to get and all of the rich people items I'm going to have. And I don't even care what God says because what I want is better, and I'm winning, you're losing, etc. He's so angry that as he's on this donkey, he doesn't even see that God has sent an angel to kill him with a sword. So the angel's like ready to go, and Balaam doesn't even see him. The donkey notices the angel that has drawn his sword, and Balaam doesn't know at all. So Balaam is so focused on the prizes that he will acquire that he doesn't even see the angel. The donkey, in an attempt to stray away from the angel, veers off the path, and Balaam whips him repeatedly. Oh, sorry, her. Me and Michael got into a discussion about this. The donkey's a girl. I'm going to just say it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. He whips her repeatedly, and he still doesn't see this angel. So he's like, what the heck? How dare you? Ka-chow. So the donkey, in an attempt to stray away from the angel, again veers off the path and presses him into a wall. And this crushes Balaam's leg. So he's beating her again, and he's like, gosh, what is wrong with you? Donkey, I hate you. And then one more time, the angel moves into a space where there's nowhere else to go. So the donkey has no other choice but to lay down and force Balaam off the path. So then the Balaam really gets mad this time, and he beats the donkey as hard as he absolutely can. And then Numbers 28, if you want to follow along, the Lord says, then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to make you beat me these 3 times?" Balaam answered the donkey, "You have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" "No," he said. So the donkey's like, "What the heck, man? I have been your loyal steed, and I cannot believe you would hurt me all of these times." And he's like, "Well, you made me look stupid in front of my Moabite officials." And then the donkey's like, "Have I ever done this to you?" And he's like, "No." Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. So from an outside perspective looking in, this story is like, wow, what the heck, Balaam, you jerk, and that was really weird. Why was the donkey talking, and what does this have to do with anything in my life? I understand. I felt the same way. Next question is, number 1, why would God do this? So I think my biggest turnoff when it came to the Old Testament was all of these huge things that God is doing that seem so like evil and angry. And in the New Testament, it's all rainbows and butterflies most of the time. And God's like, if you follow your heart, it's going to be fine. But in the Old Testament, he's like, "Gah." I didn't really understand that. And I was doing some research about it. And basically, the more forgiving God in the New Testament is still the same God in the Old Testament, because God is unchanging, and his wrath, I don't know if I like that word or not, but here, let me read biblically here really quick. "Being revealed from heaven against all goodness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth is by their wickedness," which is Romans 1:18. So God's actions in the Old Testament are just as necessary as God's actions in the New Testament. And even though they seem really bad, it's very important to have those moments to stray away from sin and all of those Old Testament things, which are so normal now, so it seems a little bit different. And this one's big for me. A lot of the time, it feels like God's changing in your life, whether that is you don't feel him in this moment, or he's not answering your questions, or he's not appearing to you like he used to, and something new is happening. A lot of the time, God isn't changing in your life, but you are changing. And that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It feels like a bad thing, but you just have to get into the groove, and I will touch on that again later. Okay, question number 2, what does this mean for me? So how can you even relate to any of these stories in the Old Testament is a really big question. And that brings me to my next one, eyes on the prize. Keeping your eye on the prize. Okay, so for me, this was like, there's so many worldly things that just seem really, really good in the moment. And then afterwards, you're like, wow, I understand now. That blew up in my face because me too, 1,000 times, right? And this isn't always a bad thing. Keeping your eyes on something other than God isn't always like the bad things that are going on in your life, but it's also some of the good things. Okay, next question is, what is your gain? So I don't mean this like, what is your gain with God? This could be like, for example, I was talking to Michael about this before I got up here. Relationships, like sometimes friendships, a lot of the time dating, you can focus all of your attention, whether this is good or bad attention, in on this one person. And it doesn't have to be dating. Like for friendships, for example, when you first start to become somebody's friend, you're like, wow, this is so cool. We're going to hang out all the time. Or even, if this relates to you, when you first get a new boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. And I'm going to pour all of my attention and all of my focus on this one person. And that doesn't even have to just be a religious thing. That can also be you disregarding who you are on the inside. And that relates to God because you're putting all of your focus in on one thing and completely disregarding everything else, which is a really big problem. This could also be, like on the other side of the spectrum, this could be bad things, for example. So you've got a test you're studying for, and you're studying nonstop, and you fail that test. Well, next time you're going to study even harder, and you're not going to even worry about the other things that are going on in your life. I mean, I've had times where I started, if any of you have anatomy, you will understand this. I started failing anatomy, and then I was like, okay, great. Now I'm going to study all the time, being in my other classes and at lunch and when I get home. And I listen to the Quizlets in the car while I drive, which is dangerous. You should not do that. And then I start failing my other classes because I'm like, well, the English doesn't matter because I have 100 in English. What's going to happen? Bad things. I got a 50. It's bad. It's bad, so you can't do that. It's the same concept with your relationship with God. So whether that is you're really winning at life right now and you're like, I'm just going to go out with my friends and we're going to hang out, or I'm just going to go home and scroll through TikTok because I do that all the time, and watch TV, and I'm not even going to think about God. Or on the other side, you're so tired after a really long day, you don't even want to think about praying because, wow, if I don't go to sleep right now, I'm probably going to die. I understand, trust me. And I know for me, a lot of the time, I think really last year, when I got into, I like to call it my stage 4 burnout. Like, I don't want to go to school. I'm on the swim team. I don't want to go to swim practice in the morning, that's for sure. I don't want to talk to my mom and dad, and I don't want to hang out with my friends. Also, never going to clean my room. That's how you know it's bad, when you don't want to clean your room. And I just let it all pile up. And the last thing on my mind was God and my relationship with God. And I would be like, hey, God, you're not showing me yourself whatsoever. What the heck, I'm really mad at you. But really, I wasn't really focusing on it at all. So that's not even a fair argument, in my opinion. And that's really difficult. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I still have my struggle with it. But as I was talking about earlier in my second question, what does this mean for me? And also in my first question, how is me changing not a bad thing when it strays me away from God? So I don't mean being strayed away from God is a good thing, because it's not. But when you change, it's really important to bring your relationship and your faith along with it. So you start really winning at life, you're going to have to start being grateful. If you really start losing at life, you also still have to be grateful, and you have to bring God in. I know there have been times where I have been like, okay, well, things are going really bad for me right now, which means God hates me and does not love me, and my life is over, so I'm not going to talk to him. And I'm going to ignore it for months on end, and then be like, wow, this feels really bad. When really, I had to learn to start sitting down. A lot of the time it's when I'm driving, in the silence of my car, and saying, God, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't feel you at all. I don't feel like life is going right, and I don't think I can do this without you, obviously, because I haven't. I've been taking L after L after L, and I need your help. Instead of pretending like God isn't even there and he doesn't even exist, I had to sit down and ask myself, when am I going to come to terms with my relationship with God, because it's my responsibility, and when can I apply that into my life? And I think that's really big. It brings me to my next question. This is a really funny question, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. Who is your donkey? Or who's your opposite of donkey? So, as funny as that sounds, we all have that one friend who's just a really great person. And I know you all have one, and they just make your life a lot better. And I know that we also have that friend that just makes your life a lot worse. So, for example, are you leaning on that friend that makes your life a lot better, or are you pouring all of your energy and attention to that friend that makes your life a lot worse? Because I know a lot of the time, I might have been in a really good place with God, but then I started hanging out with somebody who was making not good decisions, and guess what path I started to go down? Not the right one. Yes, good job. Right. So who is that friend? I want you to answer this in your head. Who is that friend that you can count on to put you in your place? A lot of the time, they're really honest, and they'll call you out when you are not doing good things. And who is that friend that's like sugarcoating everything, and they're leading you down these paths, and they're like, no, it's fine. Like, everybody messes up like that sometimes. It's no big deal at all. Okay, next question, what is next? So, say you're Balaam in this situation, because I have been. We all have been. What are you going to do to put you on that right track? So I have this, Youth Walk devotional Bible from 1992. It was my mom's. I think it's the cutest thing ever. And the chapter that goes along with this, I really like a lot. And this is pretty much the reason why I picked this chapter. And I'm going to read it for you really quick. The title is Wanting to Obey. And it says, obedience, obey, must, should have to. The very words make some teens run the other way and some adults as well. Does being told you must do something automatically make you want to do it? For me, the answer is yes. If my mom tells me to unload the dishwasher, I will literally start crying because I'm super dramatic, even though I planned on unloading the dishwasher 5 minutes ago. I know a lot of you have to be like that too, because I can't be the only one. And for some of you, obedience comes easy. You do as you're told without much fuss. You still need to be thankful God has given you willing spirit, but for others, obedience is a problem. Just knowing you have to do something or you should do something makes you not want to do it. It may sometimes take a wild experience, like Balaam and his talking donkey, but God is there, willing and ready, not to help you obey, but willing and ready to make you want to obey. I really like that because a lot of the time when I'm finally honest with God and I'm finally honest with myself and I'm taking the initiative, which as a teenager we have a really hard time doing all the time, and saying, I'm the problem right now, it's not anybody else's fault, it's all me, that is when I have those big eye-opening moments with God. Like, for example, if I get in that position where I am just constantly angry with my mom, which never happens because my mom is like my best friend, but when it does, it's like this big blow-up argument. I have to take that step back and realize, okay, well, Pyper, you were crying when you were supposed to be unloading the dishwasher, which is really dumb, and you need to stop crying because it's just the dishwasher. It's the same for your relationship with God. So when you're focusing all your time on, whether that's social media, as cliche as that is, I hate that, your friends, sometimes even your family, problems that are going on in your life, your wins, your loses, whatever it is, losses. There you go. Thanks. Sorry about that. Whether you're focusing in on those things or God, it takes a lot of big kid initiative to take a step back and look and say, am I being Balaam right now? Am I really focused on things? Am I doing the right thing, or am I beating the donkey and going after the treasure? A lot of the time, I'm Balaam, and I'm not afraid to admit that. When it comes to those worldly things, we all have things that are like, seems really fun and easy, but it's not really what God wants you to do. How can you take a step back? For me, it's always being honest, like I said. Pouring into the Bible really helps. I know it's kind of annoying, and I hate to say that, but reading the Bible is such a hard task sometimes, but it really takes going in, and going to Sunday night study has taught me how actually bit by bit you can analyze the Bible, and it's totally changed it. So if you want to go there, I would totally suggest it. But taking a step back and reading it and understanding it, and then going in and understanding that it is all up to you. Your situation isn't up to you, but how you're treating the situation, how you're reacting it, and how much energy and thought you're putting into it instead of other things that are important is completely up to you. So recapping, going back, question number 1, why would God do this? God does these things for you to show, just like in the Old Testament, you're learning lessons. And you're learning how or how not to react to things. So instead of crying when I unload the dishwasher, I could say, yes, Mom, and be really mad in my head instead of yelling at my mom, who didn't do anything wrong. And that's just a base level thing. There's a lot of really big things, like you're not friends with your friend anymore. Instead of maybe lashing out on them and sending them really mean text messages, you can take a step back and decide, is this worth it in the moment? So just like in the Old Testament, we are being taught things by God. And it's not God's epic wrath a lot of the time. It's, what am I doing wrong, and how can I fix it, and what lesson is this going to teach me? Question number 2, what does this mean for me? I think that's up for you to decide. We all have that one situation where we can see what we've done wrong in the past, you can ask yourself, were your eyes on the prize? Were your eyes on God and who he is and what he can do for you and your faith? Or were you letting all of those heavy emotions, or good emotions, it doesn't always have to be bad, weigh on you and make it to where you aren't even able to focus on God or what's important? What is your gain? We all have those things that we think. The Bible must be lying to us about that, because this is way more fun than waking up at 9 o'clock in the morning, going to church on a Sunday. That's got to be more fun. In a worldly sense, yeah, probably. But when you look at the big picture and when you take a step back and you realize, as a Christian, what your time on earth is spent doing, is it going to help you in the long run? I mean, a lot of the times, I like to hyperfixate. I'm a big hyperfixator. If you don't know what that means, example here, when I start to paint again, I will paint 400 paintings beautifully, and then I won't touch a piece of art for months and months and months. And if I'm really, right now, this is so gross, I cannot believe I'm saying this on stage, I eat meatballs and pickled beets all the time. You're probably like, disgusting, right? I've eaten it for lunch on the weekends, every weekend for 3 months. A couple days, I probably won't even think about it ever again. Things like that are not, it's really not productive to be that way. So when you're taking a step back and you're realizing, what in the long run is this going to do for me, instead of hyperfixating on that test I got a really bad grade on, a really good grade, that boy that really, really likes me, or that boy that just broke up with me, girl, vice versa, what are you doing with your time? So our time on earth is spent and called to love others, love God, love people. Are you loving God, and are you loving people? And are you doing your quote-unquote duty as a Christian? And that does not mean being the perfect Christian, because a lot of times people will get up here and be like, if you sin, you're bad, and if you don't sin, then you're perfect. And that's impossible, by the way, because we're imperfect humans. And if you constantly talk about those around you, then you are the hypocrite. But if you're not telling people about Jesus, you're also wrong. That's not what this is. If you can take a step back and say, I'm truly doing the best I can as a Christian, then you're doing all that you can do. If you're hyperfixating on what your friend Rebecca said about you earlier and how mad that's going to make you and how many people you're going to tell about that, that's not really going to help you out in the long run. So, finally, who is your donkey? Who is that one friend that you can go to in confidence? Who can you trust? Who can you tell everything you need to? And who's going to be honest with you when you're wrong and doing something wrong and tell you, snap out of it right now, you're being dumb? And who are those people that are feeding you these sugar-coated feelings of everything's going to be fine with this because you didn't do anything wrong? Everybody makes mistakes, which is true, but who isn't there for you and who is leading you towards the life that you don't want to live? What time is it? Can we go for small groups right now? Okay, I have 3 small group questions, and this is really important before I pray out. I know that every time my high school small group, I'm looking at all of you people who get in there and we're all like, blah, 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 blah. No, we don't have to talk about that. We can talk about school and friends. No, this time I'm putting my foot down. We're going to have some real fruitful conversation, and I want you to think about the answers to, hold on, I'll pull them up. Yeah, what is keeping you from God? And I want you to answer that honestly. I want you to look into your heart and say, what is keeping me from God, and what is holding me back from my relationship with the Lord? What is your gain being, what are you focusing on that you should be focusing on God with? And then that leads us to, we can combine these questions because I know we're going to take a while. What's next? And how are you going to put these things that we all know that we can do into action and actually implement them in our lives in a realistic way? Okay, that's all I have for you. I will pray us out and we can go to small group now. Bow your heads. Okay. Dear God, I want to thank you for the absolute pleasure of being up here today. And I want to pray that we can all pour into each other in small group, and that we can be really honest with ourselves, and that we can have real emotional breakthroughs. I want to pray that we can have confidence in our lives and in you throughout the rest of the week, and that we can try to not be Pyper and hyperfixate on everything, and that we can do better of looking at the picture as a whole and realizing, is this going to help me? I pray that we can all have a good rest of our week and a good weekend. I pray that school is good and that our lives get better and better through you. In Lord's name we pray, amen.